You're all set. All right, thank you, Shelley. All right, we'll go ahead and start our meeting call to order. And we will begin with the roll call. Shelley? Amber Wright. Present. Brian Smith.
Present.
Dr. Keith.
Present.
Chris. Oh, thank you, Chapter. Christopher Gilbert.
Present.
Jason Johnson.
Here.
Joseph Waterford.
Present.
Kyle Henson.
Present.
Nassau.
Present.
Orlando Accordo.
Present.
Sandy Nygaard. Present. Sharon Hollingsworth. To be absent.
Okay.
Phoebe Merrill.
Present.
And Troy Hope.
Present.
We have forum. All right, so moving on to the chairman's report. The first thing you'll see in your packet is the attendance report that is attached. Just as a reminder, if you missed 2 or more consecutive meetings, the Bureau staff will reach out and ask if you're still interested in maintaining your position on the committee. Dr. Brother choked. We have no vacancies currently. And also for management schedule is the 2025 meetings schedule as well for your review. If there aren't any questions, I'll move on to the Bureau report. Thank you. Oh, great.
Okay, that's me. So those of you who don't know, I'm Nicole Witt, Assistant Director of Public Health Pyramids, just giving our congratulations to Leah Castro. So she was promoted to the position of certification manager, which was vacated in November of last year due to retirement. So we're happy to have her start in that new role. Brent Taswell, who was acting program manager enforcement, has been promoted to a permanent enforcement program manager. As well, we wanted to highlight and welcome Stephanie Cartwright, who is a new member of our certificate of necessity section as the CON administrator, and Mitch Adair and Lance Evans, who are both joining the agency as enforcement investigators. We also have a couple of vacancies that continue on. So our bureau chief position, I know it was down, so we got a couple of folks who have emailed to let us know it had come down off our website, but it is back up there, I can assure you. And if there are any problems with it, please let me know. But we definitely would love for you to be able to share that we are still recruiting a bureau chief. So if you know anyone that is interested in that role, we'll continue to recruit for that role until we find the right fit. For our team and certainly for stakeholders as well. We have an open position in which Kim can answer questions about in our trauma section for our trauma compliance officer. So all of those are on our website. Appreciate your assistance and really getting the information out about those vacancies and promoting them. That certainly helps us draw attention to these important roles in the Bureau. Okay.
All right, thank you so very much. All right. I just wanted to highlight the upcoming 2025 EMPT of the Year Awards. These are being discussed by the Regional Council. So anyone who's open to nominate someone, but the Regional Council will ultimately elect the awardee, and those will be given out at the May EMS Council meeting. We do have a nice room reserved for that. At the last couple of years, we've had a really good turnout as the awardees have brought quite a bit of family members for that recognition. Next is the trauma awards. These are also ongoing. This will be our second year giving these awards out. This will be decided by members outside of the Bureau staff. So we have a group that has volunteered to review all of those. And there should be a total of 8 awardees that will be presented again. This will be a staff that will be the State Trauma Advisory Board at the May meeting as well. This is the timeline. A reminder that our meetings are in a little bit different cadence, just based on some conferences and holidays this year. So it's not always the third Thursday. So that meeting will be May 8th, so a little earlier in the month, just to make sure you check your calendar. Shelley has sent out all those meeting invites. So if you are a member of the committee, you do have that meeting invite on your calendar already. But if you're not and you would like to participate, please note the new date, which is May 8th. EMS portal changes, this is live. We just really wanted to highlight the big point, which is in yellow on the screen. The website was changed that when you get the renewal certification notification, it is via a .com email address. So please make sure your personnel checks their spam files if they do not receive this. They will get notified of their upcoming renewal 90, 60, and 30 days before expiration. Before it was from a .gov email address, but the system with image trend is now a .com email. So we're just trying to highlight this to make sure everyone is aware and to look for their certification renewal. Other Bureau news and updates. There's an update to the statute and rule book. This is linked here. As the will be shared after the meetings for the whole slide deck. Continue to hyperlink to this. This is also on the Bureau's bullhorn for the main website. If you go to the top of the big bullhorn section, there is an updated statute and rule hyperlinks there as well. Two dashboards we wanted to highlight are the heat data and opioid data dashboard. This is something that we're really putting a lot of attention to at the Department of Health. Heat, when I looked at the forecast for next week, it looks like Maricopa County is going to be the high 90s next week. Hopefully that's not forecasting our summer, but again, a lot of work being done to address heat-related emergencies in the state of Arizona. And opioid news, again, hyperlink to our opioid-related dashboards. We do have an entire EMS section on there as well. Anyone who's interested in anything related to poison control via our .gov delivery system, you should have received an email this week with a resource to a number of items related to poison prevention.
Dr. Bradley. I did put a link in chat box. There is going to be an Arizona heat kickoff registration that's coming up on April 14th. I put the registration link in there. It's our general planning for resources and everything that's being moved in for the summer months.
Next scope of practice, we're going to continue to highlight the work that's put into this over this from the Education Committee last year, as we probably get at least weekly questions regarding scope of practice updates. The link to scope of practice is in the slide deck. If you're ever looking for the most up-to-date scope of practice, if you go to the Bureau's website in the bullhorn, there is a link to scope of practice. Reminder, January 1st, we went live with the EMR certification level and then critical care endorsement. I'm really excited. I think the last check, we had already 299 critical care endorsed paramedics in the feed given out to the state of Arizona in the first 2.5 months. So pretty remarkable numbers. I think quite a bit higher than we were anticipating. So excited to see that number of people who adopted the work. And a big thank you to the Education Committee and Dr. Rice to really help chair that work to go over all the certification education requirements for that new endorsement level. So that was a huge work from the committee and really wanted to thank everyone here that was able to help make this go live. The drug tables were also updated to include the EMR column as well as the critical care endorsement. There are some substantial changes that we're trying to highlight. One of the big areas that I get questions about quite a bit is the hospital-based paramedic. With the addition of the critical care endorsement, some of the medications that were allowed for hospital-based paramedics have been moved to a critical care endorsement. However, we have added, the committees chose to add quite a few more oral medications to the hospital-based paramedics. So we get quite a bit of questions regarding what is allowed now, what has changed. So please review those drug tables if you have any questions. I see Marissa shaking her head. We get lots of questions about these. So while this has now been up for a couple months, just because of the fact that we do have a lot of questions about this, we will continue to highlight this to open up all the meetings throughout the year. Naloxone leave behind. I'm not sure if I saw Dave's Hansen on, but I can cover this quickly. I just wanted to say a big thank you to everyone who has participated in this program. I think it's really more remarkable that we see 53 EMS agencies in the state of Arizona are currently participating in the Naloxone leave behind program. We have just under 4,000 individuals trained. So to give you an idea of numbers, this is almost a quarter of all certified EMTs and paramedics in the state of Arizona are trained in Naloxone leave behind. I think when we initially got this grant, we were not anticipating anything near these numbers. And you can see there at the bottom, the number of kits scanned and given out to the community that we have recorded is 857 kits. One thing that we're trying to kind of get the word out on is the QR code that is on the little red bags. For some reason, the screen is locking that on our projection base. But just so you know, some crews have given out the kit and realized they forgot to scan it. If you forget to scan it, the QR code is the same regardless of which kit you use. So if the crew goes back and realizes they didn't scan at the time they handed it to a patient, they can scan any other kids and still put in the zip code that they gave that shit out. So we can still collect that data. So a big thank you. And really want to just continue to advertise the program. I think we have a few more that are coming up this week as well. Now, Adam,
I can give you the update for the next two slides. Everybody, this is Adam. What you're looking at is a pair of role guides for what we're calling pediatric emergency care coordinators. This is really the crux of a position to facilitate a lot of the EMSD's program. These are unifying role guides that helped our pediatric champions, our volunteers in both hospital settings, which is one of the role guides, and then in the EMS setting for the other role guide. And this person is entirely voluntary. It's just somebody who's really passionate about pediatrics and wants to open up a line of communication with our program for information, resources, and that kind of thing. So please scan that QR code if you're interested in having a look at what those roles might entail, and follow up with Aubriana Smith for more questions regarding EMSD things. And next, I can also do share. The share team is testing a new method of case matching. We hope that makes it a bit more automated, and that's in an effort to produce ongoing share reports, which we apologize. We are behind in our reporting, but during this transition period, we've experienced some challenges in getting it out. But from moving forward, it should be more efficient. It should be faster. It should be more timely. In addition to that, we're exploring options for updating hospital data collection to align with national schema as well, so we can be considered part of the national data. And that's all I have for share. If you have any information for me, any questions for me regarding share, please email me or my data counterpart, Josie John. Thanks, Dr. Bradley.
Thank you. So for the shared data elements, just a reminder that these were approved by EMS Council last year. This is part of that automated process that Adam had mentioned, really trying to streamline how we gather data. When BEMSTS 3.5 went live, all the vendors across the country essentially adopted the data elements specific to cardiac arrest. And so those are all in any of the EPCR platform. The EMS Council has adopted these to be part of Premier EMS Agency program recognition. And that data collection started January 1st. We have had some agencies that have asked, how am I doing in regards to our data completion? We just are trying to let people know really that this is going to take some time. We are starting that data collection January 1st and is working on some reports with that. And we are hoping within the next month that we'll be able to give agencies a report to let them know how they are doing in regards to the data collection with this standard. Just to put everyone's mind at ease, the overarching goal of this is to improve our data moving forward. And so we're not going to kick anyone out of the Premier EMS Agency program if you don't meet the standard. Really, the goal is to kind of help everyone get that compliance in the next 12 months. So just wanted to hopefully make people a little bit more comfortable in that regard. The other plug is we need your contact information. So if your agency is a Premier EMS Agency program, whoever you have listed with David Harden, that is who is going to get your report. So if you want someone inside that individual to get your agency's report, please reach out to David Harden or Ann Boxspring so we can make sure we have the correct point of contact for that. Just another plug for our data dashboard. Voxel and her team really have put together some amazing dashboards. These are available and linked on the slide deck that will go out after the committee's meetings today. We have a number of EMS dashboards as well as trauma-specific dashboards. One of the things we wanted to point out is just the availability to fund grants using this information. There are several agencies across the state that have used some of this information to actually apply for federal grants and being awarded funding based on
You
this.
said that at this dashboard, I can get these slides.
Yes.
Okay.
The slide deck will go out after the committee meetings today to all committee members, and this will be hyperlinked in there. Is curricula on the line? That's right. This is just a brief update, not a big of an issue for this committee, but the trauma registry system update, which was a huge list for the department as that transition when our previous vendors sunsetted their programs. That RFP process has concluded. Anyone who is trauma related, I think, has had extensive conversations or meetings with Carissa, but please feel free to reach out to Carissa if you have any questions about that. And then some grant opportunities. I really wanted to plug this, and thank you for David Harden, who really helped with that, kind of get the messaging out on this. This, as you can see, is a $2 billion, so not in the million, $2 billion federal appropriation for funding. This is specific to municipalities. We like to highlight this. So the Bureau of EMS and ADHS cannot apply for this. Municipalities have to be the ones that actually apply for the funding. I know Dr. Heather, I called him out this morning at our first meeting. They are one of the awardees at the federal level that has gotten grant funding. He participated in a webinar yesterday. Josh, I'd love to briefly just about what your award was to give the committee some ideas.
Yeah, I can give a real brief overview. So the SS4A mechanism provides grants for 3 types of projects. The first is planning projects. Those are done by county health departments. The ones that apply to us as EMS providers are demonstration and implementation projects. Those projects should be designed to reduce roadway and traffic mortality in your communities. Our program that we put together really leverages our existing Position 1 program. We received grant funding to expand that program so that there's a position available 365 days a year to respond to high acuity traffic accidents or roadway injuries and provide things like blood transfusion, airway management, surgical procedures, that type of stuff. If you want more information, feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to sit down and walk you through the process.
Thank you. All right. That is at the slide deck. Now hand it over to Nicole for an update on the strategic planning process.
Yeah, so I just want to say thank you to everyone who contributed to the strategic plan itself. I know there was extensive work, in particular on behalf of the Bureau as well, for doing that stakeholder engagement to have our first strategic plan, which was approved in September, and it's been a bit of a gap since we talked about it. Mostly this because there's a process for approval once it's approved by this committee through our director's office and then on to the governor's office. So we're now at this stage on this 5-year strategic plan, which we will report on annually. That is required in statute for us to provide a report through the director's office, the governor's office on not really the strategic plan, but an annual report on that plan of the committees. So we'll be using the strategic plan annual report as that. Now we can start really working towards the work group. So I recognize we are a little behind because of our approval process, but hopefully we'll get right back on track. And I'm sure Dr. Bradley wants to add a little bit, but we just wanted on the agenda today to talk about it, let you know that we haven't forgotten about it, and thank you for approving it. And then we will start actively working towards those work groups and starting to think about the work and the priorities that were identified by stakeholders for that plan.
Yes, I'll just tack on to that a very big thank you. I know we had listening sessions and kind of input from all 4 regional councils along with a number of organizations. And then we had the 4-hour strategic planning summit that we had hosted here at the Bureau and had over 75 in-person attendees for that. Really our goal is, well, it seems like we're actually behind. We're truly not. This is a strategic plan that is for 5 years, starting in 2025, going through 2030. So we are at least in a really good place in having some pillars of what we want to focus our strategic planning on. And that were identified by everyone who participated in that process. So we look forward in the next few months to starting to work on some of those work groups, prioritize what's the first area we want to address when it comes to whether it be workforce development, cardiac arrest, opioids, with a number of items identified in that process. So thank you. And just to remind everyone, it is a 5-year strategic plan, so we are still well positioned for that in terms of implementation.
And maybe I'll just add one more thing as well. The priorities for the strategic plan, workforce, opioid, and the things that were identified by stakeholders actually align really, really well with our agency strategic plan and also some of the governor's priorities. So I'm really excited to be able to bring the work that's done by this committee and align it with that broader and overarching strategic plan and governor priorities, in particular around areas related to life expectancy. These priorities fall under that category. So exciting to get started.
Gail, anything else from the Bureau? Nothing else? Thank you.
Wonderful. I will move on to discussion and action items. The first one here, I can take a motion to discuss them and approve the draft minutes from November's meeting.
Second.
Thank you. Matt, Shelley has them up right now. If there's any discussion, I'll give folks just a moment. Shelley has reached the end. Any discussion on the minutes from last All right, hearing none, I'll move to a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Are there any, are there any opposed? And any members wishing to abstain? Wonderful, motion passes. For the next one, I can take a motion to discuss, or actually, I don't need a motion for this. The next one is to discuss Arizona Advanced Life Support Training Institutions at fail rate for first attempt on the paramedic exam, and that's for Dan Bojo.
Hey, everybody. So as you guys know, July 1st of 2024, National Registry sunsetted the psychomotor skills exam. So now we have enough data to compare, at least in 2024, the differences. So just so everybody knows, January 1st, 2024 to June 30th, 2024, the state of Arizona had a 78% pass rate, 73% on the national level for first-time pass rates. Now, compared to the back half of the year where they sunsetted the psychomotor skills, so that would be July 1st, 2024 to December 31st, 2024, the state of Arizona had an 82% pass rate. So the first-time pass rates increased a little bit, but on a national level, it decreased to 71%. So those are the first-time pass rates for ALS programs in Arizona. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Dan, for the update. Is there any discussion on this or questions for Dan?
Dan, this is Joe from Arizona Western. Are we still allowed to use an attestation form for that? Or does we have to do the complete package still?
For right now, do the complete packet. The attestation is still in discussion on our end.
Shelley, Kyle here. Is this the discussion in general, or were you going to add that to a different component of the agenda?
Go ahead with your comment.
Yeah, so Dan, this came up on the last meeting and I had asked Shelley to put it on the agenda myself. I don't know if there were others, I believe. The concern is, where's the checks and balances process without having, let me back up. Where's the checks and balances process for the program directors that we're not just checking people through the process? And is there a discussion about a third party or someone from another training institution checking off students in another training institution? And I understand that a couple of folks had either expressed interest or emailed into you about this process, and that there wasn't much discussion back and there were no sidebar meetings or anything set up. Can you educate the group and walk us through how this works with respect to any college signing off their folks on psychomotor in the classroom and that bias because they've already been working with that same instructor in that same group?
Currently, this is still in discussion internally. If you go per Arizona rule, there's nothing that mandates a third party coming in and doing that checks and balances currently. But that's why it's under discussion internally before we start making subgroups or anything like that to discuss it.
Can you find in discussion internally? I mean, I talked about this at the last meeting, and I've reached out to some other senior educators, and there's been no request for a meeting. Who's determining this? Who's the internal?
That would be myself, the bureau or assistant bureau chief, the medical director, to see how we're actually going to go about presenting this to everybody to get feedback.
Okay, so when we get the stakeholders involved, we're 3 months further and no stakeholders are in on this.
The stakeholders will get involved here shortly. We're just trying to figure it all out and make sure that we're following the rules appropriately.
Is that something that the education committee will weigh in on, or just have oversight, or and maybe this is a Shelley or Dr. Bradley question, where do we weigh in on this? Because I have some pretty substantial concerns on this process.
So Kyle, this is Gail. Maybe I can address the part that we're trying to figure out right now. We are in a little bit, as you saw mentioned, without currently having a bureau chief and having kind of tried to fill a number of personnel positions within the department, trying to figure out where priorities are on this. I will say that anything that is in rule, the bureau can't enforce things that are not outlined specifically in rule. I think that's the shortest answer to the question is if something is outlined in rule, it's very easy for the bureau to enforce that. If something is not outlined, then it becomes kind of more unclear as to how to navigate that process. We do value the education committee significantly, which is why when we looked at critical care endorsement and EMR, we really ran that whole process through this committee, as opposed to just the rule writing process, understanding that many individuals don't participate in the rule writing meetings, but do actively participate in these committee meetings. So that is why we brought that kind of whole certification process through those committees, through the education committee last year. So the short answer is, if it's not in rule, we have a difficult time enforcing something, but we are certainly open to bringing as much as we can through this committee as really the expert on education in the state of Arizona. So we value the participation from this group and do appreciate your concerns that you bring forward. Unfortunately, we do have other members in the education committee that have vastly different opinions on the subject. So sometimes trying to get consensus, especially something not outlined in rules, is a little bit difficult when there are differences in opinions.
Sure, I appreciate you explaining it. So I guess to that point is, can we get a subcommittee set up? And Dr. Dan, is this something we can move forward quicker, or is it stagnated because it's not a bureau chief? And I'm not implying that that's a problem, but just where are we really at? Because I had hoped that from the last meeting, we could get it on the agenda and had a subcommittee. And now it's on the agenda and it's really just, we're still just kicking it down with really not a lot of discussion from the stakeholders, in my opinion.
From my seat, as long as I have permission and approval to start a subcommittee and start working through it, I have no problem being the main point of contact. I just need to get the go ahead to start doing that.
Great.
Orlando, I see your hand. Oh,
Hold on just a second. Who approves that?
Currently, I would imagine it would be the education committee to start it. I am not all in tune with the rules of the education committee and how subcommittees work. I'm just putting it out there that I have no problem. I don't know if we call it chairing or being the point of contact or running meetings. So that's where it sits at this point.
Appreciate that. Maybe Shelley, you can explain the role, and then I'll yield to everyone else. I don't want to tie up. I know we have a lot of other members that have questions. Thank you.
thank you, Kyle. I will take the next two questions and then, Orlando, you had your hand up first.
Yes, so I think that this really boils down to gathering all the program directors here in the state, and maybe this is where we can start the process on some opinions and things that we could obviously talk about, because this is really pointing towards the program directors. Right now, I don't know if third parties need to be involved, but certainly since we're the ones who are running the whole program, it should be appointed to our program directors to have this meeting, and maybe Dan can start that process. So in that way, you have different views, not outside folks for now, but certainly the program directors needs to be involved.
Thank you, Orlando. Sandy?
Yes, I just want to ditto what Kyle said. I think this is very important, a very important subject to make sure that we are producing the absolute best students and paramedics and EMCTs in that we can. It just seems to me like some of it's being glossed over. If you do have a committee, a subcommittee, I would love to participate in that. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy. Yeah, all I'll say is that, as everyone's aware, there's obviously multiple stakeholder groups that, you know, could potentially be interested in this. So I think that the larger conversation could be had. I think until something changed in rule, I think it makes it very difficult for the scale set to affect any enforceable change across the board. Josh.
I just wanted to add a comment. For those of you that may not know what I do, I'm Josh Gaither. I'm the EMS division chief at the University of Arizona. We run a degree program in EMS, including a paramedic training program. I'm the director of that program. So with that hat on, I want to very clearly acknowledge the concerns of quality. I also want to maybe look at the other side of the coin. Administratively, the cost of what you're proposing can be extremely burdensome, and finding individuals who are willing to volunteer their time to come in and help do things like this can be virtually impossible and significantly restrict the ability of us to train paramedics. So I acknowledge the discussion is very valid and important. However, I would fall back on, I think, what Dr. Rice just mentioned, which is it's going to be very important to stay within the regulatory structure to ensure that we can effectively train paramedics and fill the positions that we have. That's my 2 cents.
Thank you, Dr. Gaither. Kyle.
I think the concern is that there seems to be resistance to even setting up the subcommittee. I've asked already, how does that happen? And I'm just hearing that, well, the law says, does the law say or the rules say we can't have a subcommittee? I'm on the receiving end as an agency head getting these folks, and I've talked to some other agency heads, and I actually disagree with Orlando in that I don't think it should just be the colleges. Who's watching the watchers? We are the stakeholder receiving the employees that the agencies train. I'm struggling with why we can't have a subcommittee to discuss what those requirements are if the rule allows it. If the rule doesn't allow it, as I asked earlier for Shelley to review, so be it. I don't think anyone on the call is trying to change the rule. I'm certainly not. That's a whole different conversation. I'm trying to give input on this new process. And I've heard other people trying to give input to the state and that nothing has been responded to.
Thank you, Kyle, for your input. I think we all understand the concern for sure. I think as the chair of the education committee, I think that it's difficult to set up a work group that would, without any sort of functional outcome in mind, sort of what we're aiming to do. And if what we're aiming to do doesn't fit within rule, it's difficult to justify creating a subgroup or a working group within the DHS subcommittee that wouldn't be able to affect actual change or action within the DHS's rules. So I think that's sort of the boundary with which we're operating, and why creating a work group for this specific action item would be challenging at the DHS level. Not
So
that
what's
folks
your
can't-
suggestion? Yeah, fair enough. I appreciate the clarification. So what's your suggestion for it? As the chair of the group?
I think that the rules don't preclude individuals who are interested in coming up with ways that they would like to, you know, manage their own training programs. I think it's difficult for the state at this time. I think, as Dr. Bradley had mentioned, it's difficult for the state to be able to support forming a work group to make change that would fall outside of what we're allowed by rule.
Okay.
But I do think it's, you know, the benefit of these public meetings is that there's the opportunity to get on the public record that as your concerns is verbalized. And so as we go through the rule writing process and the 5-year review cycle, things like this are on the record as being expressed as a concern. And so this is the opportunity and the benefit of these public meetings is to get that on the record of what your feelings and thoughts are on the subject. So thank you for bringing it forward.
All right, and if there's nothing else on action item B, I will move on to D. We're going to skip over C, not yet prepared and ready for presentation, so we will skip this today. Moving on to D, discuss options for creating an STR training PowerPoint to include and approve forming a work group.
Sure, if we can, click on the hyperlink there. So a little bit of background, as we have updated the scope of practice, we have gone through several kind of minor changes in the last few years prior to the big substantial change with the addition of the EMS critical care endorsement. We had a significant larger number of FTRs historically, and the number of FTRs is much smaller. This committee has put in quite a bit of work putting together those training curriculums to address the FTRs, and those are available. One of the pieces that we're looking to see is there is currently an FDR training document that I would describe as more like an outline that was put together probably 8 years ago by the Education Committee. It is, I think, 280 something pages long, and so likely not very useful and pretty dated. So what we are trying to figure out is how best to address this. Dan had brought through some suggestions of creating kind of a linked website to the Bureau's website specific for STR training curriculum, and having some of those in place. So we do have some of those curriculums this committee has developed. There are a few on here that we have not yet developed. And so the question is, do we want to look at forming a work group again to create another STR training, as we do need to update those? Ideally, it would be nice to sunset that 280 some page document, as it really is probably not up to date. But by rule, we do have to have something up there in regards to SDRs. So I wanted to see if the group, as we kind of dwindled off some of our other educational topics, would the group be interested in creating another work group to create training on another STR to kind of help fill in some of those gaps. If we can get this done, I think it'd be a really nice opportunity to hopefully eliminate that other document moving forward. Right.
What's that other document on?
Where
Is it a particular STR or is it just?
It's all of them,
including
it's like 100 something pages, 200 pages. It's just an outline of
Just the
education.
outline stuff
Yeah.
that we had done previously.
Yes.
But part of that's been done, right? Some parts of it have been done.
Of
There's some
the-
stuff that have been turned into,
Yeah.
PowerPoint and stuff.
and stuff like that. So.
Yes.
What?
And tile CO2, and there's a few that are.
Yeah,
Yeah, we have prioritized those in the past year or so in terms of creating new education modules. Most of them have focused more on the FTRs to sort of round those out. So I think I definitely would be supportive of continuing to finish the rest of them, as opposed to trying to update a 200-page document that is likely not super helpful to folks. So in my opinion, that's probably a better use of the committee's time.
You know, to be honest, I looked through it when I was trying to develop some STR training for our crews, and I was like, this is not useful. So I kind of put it to the side. So I would love to do this. I'd help with that.
do we need a motion to do this or can we?
Yeah, I think we have some hands online.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. I got a quick question, specific to what's on the screen right now. I feel like I know we talked about this, but I do have some of our personnel that are a little bit concerned and maybe the need clear definition. On the automated transport ventilator, it has EMT as an STR, and it's a scope of practice for I's and P's. You need that the transport ventilator with advanced modes, it's just for the critical care. Now, my agency in particular does in the facility transports, and we have the Zoll C-vent, which kind of meets both those definitions of a ventilator. So my question is, if we're not critical care right now, we can use the Zoll C-vent in the automated mode.
I don't know if I totally heard your question, Chris, so I'm gonna rephrase it. So are you asking about using advanced capable ventilators with more automated modes? Is that what your question is?
Yeah, correct.
So when we made this table, there was a purposeful decision to not define what an advanced mode was versus an automated transport ventilator. So it was really left to the decision of the local medical director, what they would be, what he or she would be willing to allow. So I think I heard you say you're using the Zoll EMV Plus. We use the same thing. It's, you know, we don't consider that an advanced ventilator. You know, it's SIMV, it's AC. Those are like pretty basic modes. If you were doing like a oscillator or something, that's probably a little bit more advanced, and that would probably fall under the critical care thing. But there's no definition of what those terms actually mean. So as long as your medical director is okay with you using that vent with whatever settings they've approved, you should feel fine to do that.
Okay, thank you, sir. Sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah, and then just to reference what I looked at the STR document that's on the Bureau's website, it's currently 231. So I exaggerated by saying 280, but still 231 pages is probably 200 pages too long. And as Dr. Johnson pointed out, probably not as useful for medical directors that are looking to actually implement training. So I think it would be great if this group wants to maybe look at the STR table currently and see which we have educational modules for, and are there any we'd like to form a work group for to try to start creating a few more of these and possibly sunset that other document. When I look at the independent study list, which is kind of where we have these and the STR, so we do have currently training for EMT for supraglottic airways, or CPAP, EMT capnography, and EMT IM epinephrine for anaphylaxis. So those are the ones we currently have training modules that have been vetted through the committee and updated on the appropriate cycle. When we go back to the current scope of practice, Shelley, if you could go back to that. Yep. And then kind of look and see next on the list, or kind of priority wise, what do we see as ones that we would want to potentially have one for? Currently, I see there is medication assisted sedation, or the essentially RSI. That's something that I think probably many individuals have training on, and that would be potentially a relatively easy one to produce some training on, kind of best practices for STR training. So that would be one to consider. And then
I don't think we have one on surgical airways.
Yeah, we don't have one on surgical airways. Again, that would be another good one to consider. So those are kind of maybe two for the committee to consider when we work groups on.
So surgical airway did get taken away since we went just to correct thyrotomy, correct? Because surgical airway used to be in here, or surgical correct used to be an STR. And so it's not in here, it's just a check mark now. So line item number 16 on airway and ventilation. Used to be an STR. You guys approve it that it's just medical direction and approve that, or is that special cricothyrotomy?
Or is that a check mark? For paramedic, is a check mark?
Yep. It used to be an STR back in the
They
day.
had to divide it into two. It has needle and surgical as two separate.
Yes.
The needle is approved, right? And then
Well, they used to use there was a special cricothyrotomy that they were using for the, in the past, and we just didn't agree with it with Phoenix Fire. So when Dr. Gallagher used to be our medical director, he strongly suggested that we did a surgical cric, that we can make it an STR as long as we train our members. However, it's missing here. So if the overall enveloped cricothyrotomy in general, then we're okay with it. But if it's not, if it's taking out surgical crics, we still need that as an organization.
Yeah, Craig would include surgical Craig. Yeah, Craig would include surgical or needle Craig. But it includes both.
They took it out because they went to I can't remember the device. They made a big push, good marketing. It was not a good airway.
Sure.
So,
Yeah, I mean, I think it's up to your medical director, which Craig kits or Craig procedures you're capable of doing.
Yeah.
And currently it's not listed as an FTR, right? It used to be.
used to be that.
So we do have, I know, I'm kind of looking at some of the FDRs here. The RSI is definitely one that we could do relatively easily. The other one, there's the IV access, IV initiation peripheral, and IV maintenance of non-medicated IV fluids. Those could probably be combined into one relatively brief. So that is on page 4 of the scope of practice. That could potentially be combined into one relatively brief training, as I think any agencies having their personnel initiate IV access and do that. That would be another one for consideration, which would knock out 3 more STR.
Yeah, I think we've talked in the past about the IV and combining that with fluid. We haven't really discussed the RSI one before, but I'd be supportive of working on that as well. So if we have a motion, or if there's additional conversation to be had, we can definitely move forward if folks are agreeable.
Make a motion to form a work group to look at developing PowerPoint training for the SDRs.
I'll second it.
Good enough?
All of that.
Yes.
Then we can kind of decide which ones we want to work on.
Yeah, I need that.
I think it's a good way to do it.
Okay. All right. Any further discussion? Motion on the table is to create a work group to finalize the STR trainings with the end goal of removing that old document. All in favor, say aye.
I
Any opposed, say nay. Great. And as with all of our other work groups, if anyone is interested in participating specifically in these, please let myself or Shelley know, and we can make sure that we get everyone added to those work group meetings.
And you can volunteer now too, so we can just get your name.
And we got a hands up. I got
That messed up.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
And
Thank you.
Andy's crowd.
Gilbert.
Thank you, Sandy and Chris. Hands up to volunteer, or do you have another discussion?
I'm gonna take.
Too late, too late.
Hands up to volunteer, please.
You better. And then Sarah, I have Sarah left. I'm not sure.
Michelle. James Cunningham, are you volunteering or asking a question?
Volunteering.
Great, thank you. And the biggest work group ever.
I know.
I just put people up. All right, thank you guys for entertaining that. And then we have our last standing item, which is reviewing the training modules and improve forming work groups and update create material as needed. I don't have anything else, but there was a request from the Southern Arizona region to create a short training related to reporting suspected cases of abuse and neglect. So we had recently updated our Southern Arizona guideline, and there are some changes to the website, changes to the ways in which you log in and create accounts to report these things. And so our region thought it might be helpful to have a short training that was put out, potentially a work group combined of education committee and maybe some folks that run our paces potentially, to be able to create a short training to help make sure folks are aware of how to do the correct reporting and which portal to use for which types of patient. That was a specific request from the Southern region, but certainly if we have other work groups going on, this can be tabled for sure. And that's just one I would mention that came up. I'll probably throw it on the labor to we have a couple already going on. Anything else for the standing item at the bottom? Give enough work groups for folks. The next one, if you guys have agenda items that you would like considered for the next meeting, please send those to Shelley. And the next call to the public. Hearing none, I'll move on to upcoming events. There are several here in the packet today. With links.
Somebody raised hands. I just saw that.
Oh, there raised hands. Oh, okay. Thank you for catching that. If someone has something, please.
James, was that you?
No, I just delayed. Sorry.
Okay. As always, you can visit the Bureau's website for a more complete list of upcoming events. Our next meeting is going to be 10th of July. And with that, we'll adjourn the meeting.
Thank you, everyone.
Oh.